The passage before us, when I was given it, when Justin was saying, here's the passage that we're covering this morning, and I looked at it, and as I was getting ready for this morning, a thought occurred to me. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot in this passage. There is the fact that there's this story, this transfiguration, nothing like that in the New Testament, and Jesus' clothes are glowing white. What's with that? There's the showing up of Moses and Elijah, a voice out of heaven, that this is my beloved. And then don't tell anybody. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on, as I mentioned, that in the structure of this, that this is a story that connects the beginning to the end of Mark. It is in that pronouncement of, this is my son, the beloved. This is the second of 3 times that pronouncement, once at the very beginning, and then one more time yet to come. And this is the hint. There's a lot going on, and we could try to get to all of that. But, kickoff is still, we might be pushing even that. So I'm not going to try that, not because it's not good or right, but there is something else going on here that I think is even more important. That at its core, this story, this passage is a revealing. It is a way of helping people see something that up until that point they couldn't see. The technical word, and if you're from a liturgical background, you'll know that this is called an epiphany. And if you know that, you might know that we are concluding the season of Epiphany that began right after Christmas, right after the New Year, and concludes today. See, most people think it's Super Bowl Sunday. No. This is the last Sunday of Epiphany. And you can impress all the friends at your Super Bowl party this afternoon, I'm sure, if you bring that point up. You'll be the hit. I'm just sure of it. It is a story of revealing. It is an epiphany. It is, sometimes we call this a mystical experience. But there's a phrase that I learned a few years back that has stuck with me that I find even more helpful, and it comes from the Celtic tradition. The Celts are the people who lived literally on the edge, beyond the reach of the Roman Empire, and particularly the church as it came into being an empire. And they got to develop this faith, a very organic, it's their own kind of expression of faith. And they had a phrase for a story like this, an experience like this, and it was called a thin space moment. Now, you may know this, but if you don't, a thin space moment says that the world as we know it, there is the physical world, and then there is the spiritual world. There's the material world. There's the world that is beyond the material. It's real, but between those two, there usually is a pretty thick wall. It's tough to live in both. But once in a while, the conditions are such that between these two worlds they get thinner and thinner and thinner and almost transparent. That what is normally invisible suddenly becomes visible. That this wall, this reality, becomes permeable. What we have in front of us this morning is a thin space moment. And the disciples are able to see what maybe has always been going on, but now it's part of their world. They begin to see who Jesus is as Jesus really is and has always been. They see Jesus conversing with Moses and Elijah, the law and the prophets. Jesus coming to reframe, complete the law and the prophets. It's all done for the 3 disciples who are there so that they can begin to see that there is a whole lot going on around them that they never imagined. And this morning, I want to explore this with you a little bit, to talk about, so what is being revealed here, not only to them, but just as importantly, today. Thin space moments tend to be understood as a gift. It is a way of God sometimes ambushing us, sometimes sneaking up, whispering into our souls. It could be as loud as as something crashing and thunder. It could be as quiet as that still small voice that Elijah had in his lifetime. But it is a way of opening us up to a reality that has always been there, but we just don't usually get to see it. It's a way of reframing our world. It's a way of God dropping a clue, because that's what this is. It's not that the disciples suddenly understood, oh, now we get it. They obviously didn't. But they were able at one point to come back after the resurrection, after Jesus had in fact gone to the cross, and after he came back, then they were able to see, that's what he was. There was a clue there. It wasn't as random. It wasn't as chaotic as we thought it was at the moment. It wasn't as God-forsaken a moment as we feared it might be. We get to see our own lives, the story of our own lives, in a different way. It reframes all of it. There's more going on here than you know, is the basic message of every revealing, of every thin space moment. It happens throughout Scripture. Once you start looking for him, you find him everywhere. You find Jacob in that story, where Jacob's in the ladder of Jacob, and as he has a dream and he wakes up, and it's almost the chorus of all thin space moments from there on. Surely God was in this place and I didn't know it. Moses had him, Elijah had him. It's a gift. And it says, you're not alone. No matter what you may think or feel in any moment, you are not alone. That the presence of God is here, has always been here, and every once in a while we catch a glimpse of that, and we get to carry that with us. Thin space moments still happen, by the way. This isn't just a history lesson of what took place on a mountain 2,500 years ago. This is about a way that God continues to speak. And my guess is we've had them. You've had them. You may not have called it that at the moment, but you've had it. You've had it like I've had it when I was backpacking one time, and it was up in the Sierra Nevadas, and I'm there in the mountain, and I'm by myself in this one area for hours, and the presence and the silence became literally deafening. And by what I mean by that, I had to cover my ears. And from that day forward, you could put me up against a wall, and I would still say, I am absolutely certain I was in the presence of something larger than myself. I don't care what you call it, I was there. But the most profound time was when our first daughter was born. It repeated as a second. Our second was born, but at this point, our daughter, maybe 18 months, still in a crib, still getting up every night. It was 3 a.m. It was my turn to go comfort her. And I remember taking her out of the crib, and she was just in one of those times where you're terrified and you don't know why, and you're stiff. And I remember taking her and going, oh, kid, relax. You are loved. It's okay. You're going to be just fine. You are loved. And in not the kind of voice that you and I hear, but there was a sense that it came clear and said, and how long have I been trying to tell you the same? Where did that come from? And then, in this sense, the words of Jesus got used. And you know how much you love your daughter. The word that my wife and I used at that point was bamboozled. We were just completely bamboozled by this child. It was, we didn't know we could love something and be that wrapped up in anything. You know, if you, flawed as you are as a father, if you can love this way, how much more than do I love you? I knew those words, but boy, did they mean something different in that moment. It became a thin space moment for me. And I remember thinking, oh no, that couldn't possibly be. That couldn't possibly be. Because if that were true, it would change everything. It did. I had gone to seminary. I was in my first church at that point. I knew all kinds of things about God. I knew God loved me. This wasn't a new concept. But I had never experienced that in that way before. And it changed me. It changed the way I understood all the words and all the doctrines. It changed the way I came to the Bible and all the stories. It reframed everything in that moment. It was a thin space moment. It was a revealing. It let me know something that I hadn't understood in quite that way ever before. And because of it, it was a clue that said, oh, there's so much more going on here than you know, or that you think you know. More than any of the words, more than any of the doctrine, more than any of those things, this sunk into my soul. It is what I call the heart of faith. The heart of faith is the experience that integrates everything. And it reorients us not with new concepts, but with the experience that integrates what all my intellectual ideas about God, my concepts, my emotions, my feelings, my decisions. And it provides me a stance, a way of approaching life that entrusts myself to this presence, this voice, this guidance, this thing that now is at the heart of and holds everything together in my being. I'm no longer fragmented. It's making me whole. What are we supposed to do with that? Well, the first stage most of us do is just kind of ignore it. Because, if you go around talking about, let me tell you how God spoke to me last night. Try that at the Super Bowl party. See how that goes. And people are going to think you're weird. And you're not even sure if I wasn't sure about that moment. Was this just indigestion? Was it just my brain misfiring? Was it lack of sleep? You don't know. You don't know, and so you tend to ignore it. I was reading that when they asked the question, tell me a time when you've experienced God, the number of people is staggering who have stories about that, but we never talk about it. Because people are going to think we're weird, and we're not even sure ourselves. At some point, we get over that. At least we begin to ponder that, as like Mary did. She pondered all these things in her heart, even if she didn't understand them. And then we start to have this experience, and another one. So the second stage is once we get past, well, maybe I'm not nuts. Then what we do in the second stage is we enshrine that place. We build something there. Let's put a church here. Let's put a plaque here. Oh my gosh, this is the place where God was here and I didn't know it. So let's put a sign here. And we create these shrines because this place suddenly, right here, is the place that I encountered God. And so we want to come back to it. We want to hold it up because there's something amazing about this space. When Jacob woke up and said, surely God has been in this place and I didn't know it, he took the rocks that had been his pillow and he created a little shrine here because obviously this is the place where it connects between heaven and earth. We do that all the time and then because we're humans, then we'll fight about it. No. Your place isn't that sacred. My place is. Go to the Holy Land and look at all the places that have set up as shrines to all the different encounters and all the different fights that go on about whose place is more holy, whose place is more But that's what we do at first. There's a couple problems, of course. Is we create these shrines because if we get to go back to them, maybe we'll get that same experience. Here's the problem. C.S. Lewis used to have a thing about the prayer that God never answers. The God that never answers, C.S. Lewis said, is the prayer for encore. Do it again, just like it was before. Do it again, so I can just feel the same way, so I can just connect in the same way. And God doesn't do that. Or what we've done is we have confused this place, this rock, this shrine, this church, this spring, this tree, this hill. We have confused this place with the presence that we experienced there. And then we get to the point, finally, hopefully, to the third stage. And the third stage is, well, maybe it's not about this place. And if God is in this place, and 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 God is in this place, suddenly it begins to dawn on us, then maybe the issue is, where is God not? And that really begins to open the doors. Maybe there are lots of places that we get to experience God. And maybe it's our insistence that we keep going back to those places, that those are the places we're going to find God, that keeps us from experiencing where God is trying to meet us right now. Since that time, I have been able to talk about those things and go, well, if people think I'm crazy, I'm crazy. Sure. And I've disconnected from having to be in that same place, that same mood and all. And I've begun to see and begun to anticipate, if those are clues for what God is doing, I want to know what God's going to do next. And so we begin to see and have these moments more and more, not because we're all that spiritual. It's just we allowed the possibility. And I should keep my eyes open. And so there have been times where I will be with people, and sometimes in great suffering. And if I'm able, and I'm stepping back, I'm able to see God is in this place. There is something in the grief and the sorrow and the compassion and the heart. Sometimes it's in joyful places. There's more than once on a Christmas Eve when people are holding candles and we're singing Silent Night. And that transforms that whole situation and experience. The words, the hopes and fears from all the years are met in thee tonight. And there becomes more than just words on a page. There's times when we gather around communion. And it becomes more than bread and becomes more than juice, becomes more than the cups and all the things that we do. And I swear there are times, and you can just see the entire span of humanity gathered around this same table, that we are all present here together. Where is God not? Where has God been in those places in your life when all that's missing is our capacity to see and grasp? When we come to worship, we encounter God. And it doesn't mean it's always a thin place moment. But at its best, what we are doing here is preparing us and opening us up so that we are more able to experience and comprehend what God is doing in the other 6 days of the week. As we do that through Christ, who Christ is the ultimate thin space moment in humanity. Here's the person who is completely human and yet completely drenched in divinity. The one for whom the wall between those two worlds is absolutely transparent. And as we begin to look closer and gather closer, we begin to see God and ourselves in a whole new way. That as we begin to approach stories like this, the real power of this story is as we draw closer that the words, this is my beloved, suddenly those words are meant for you too. You are the beloved. You are the one to whom God comes this day. And when we hear that, then life itself starts to get transfigured. Life itself takes on a different kind of a glow. That there is a transparency to everything that we do and everywhere we go, that suddenly this whole thing, there's so much more going on here than we ever imagined. So pay attention. Keep your eyes open this week. We may hear and catch the sense that everything is sacred. And it will change everything. Amen.